What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Serious Angler podcast. I am your host, Bailey Egbert, and I am coming to you live from a hotel in Wisconsin. I'm here for a work trip, and here running the show, pushing all the buttons for me tonight is my co-host, the captain, Mr. Andy Full. What's going on, buddy?
What's big week. Truck's back in the shop. We're doing good things. Got it back Friday night. She's broke again. So kudos to Basil Ford. Never buy a truck there. I apologize. I'm just really fed up with it. But yeah, we smashed them on the steelhead trips today, and legs are a little tired, and got to get up at 4:30 tomorrow and do it again. So
That's the kind of life, my friend.
Yeah, it's fun. So I gotta go tie about 100 egg sacks after we're done with this. So I'm probably gonna be up till about 1 or 2. It's gonna be a good night.
Hey, every time you bring up getting up early and doing all the crap you got to do for guiding, I will always remind you it's better than getting up at 6 a.m. going to that goddamn bank.
Fair, very fair. It's extremely fair. So I can't wait for it to get warm again to get the boat back out. Speaking of which, we had that crazy windstorm in Buffalo over the weekend. You were here for it. It ripped my boat cover off. It was like partially like up on my garage. Yeah. So like I've had to check and make sure it's not torn. But my boat did get nice and dry due to the wind. So next step is getting it to storage if I can ever get it there, if my truck would stop breaking down. So yeah.
I think, like I told you after it broke down the first time, that it's time for a new truck.
Well, I can't trade it in if I don't have it. So
This is fair.
like I'm in a little pickle here, but it is what it is.
We'll figure it out, buddy. No worries at all.
Life goes on.
Yeah. But guys, really, really fun show tonight. We have Mr. Dean Rojas joining us, and we had a few technical difficulties, but he pulled through, and we super appreciate him figuring out and taking the time out to join us tonight. So we're going to be doing a cool segment here tonight, talking about power fishing versus finesse fishing, and different situational uses for each. So who better than Mr. Dean Rojas to join us, and we're excited to have him.
Yeah,
but
awesome.
Andy, before we get into that, a couple different things. I think first and foremost, we have a lot of big things coming into 2022, and obviously, like you told me not to, I won't say anything, but exciting 2022 for you, my friend.
We'll divulge later on that one.
Andy will let us know when the time is right, but we're really excited for 2022 because it's going to be action-packed, a lot coming down the pipe, and we're just really excited, and we appreciate everyone who shows the support week by week, day by day. It means the world to us. So Andy, I think without further ado, we have some people joining in here now. Obviously, we're running a little later on the show tonight, and that is 100% my fault because I'm here in Central Time Zone on a work trip. But
hope you had a good dinner.
I had a great dinner. Thank you for allowing me to enjoy my dinner peacefully before we have Mr. Dean Rojas on here tonight.
Yeah.
Dude, I think without further ado, we got to get him in here.
Absolutely. Want me to?
Bring him in.
Good evening, Dean.
Hey, Andrew. Hey, Bailey. How are we doing tonight?
Good, man. How are you?
Wonderful. It's
awesome.
It's about 70 degrees outside, and it's been warm out here in the desert. I got to go do some fishing yesterday. Caught some big smallmouth and largemouth. So a couple of weeks before Christmas, they're biting.
Yeah, I'm jealous.
Thank you. It's weird because, and Dean, I think first of all, thank you for going through the lovely headache of technology to join us here tonight. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, I do so many of these, and you guys use all different kinds of streaming times. So I have to download and I have to go through the whole process every single time. But hey, it doesn't matter. We're here. We can talk about fishing now, and it's all good.
Awesome.
That is the short of it. This technology world, it's like 900 different directions. So we appreciate you hopping in with us. But it's so funny that it's mid-December, a week out from Christmas, and you're out in the Western time zones, and you're catching fish. And it's weird that we're here in the East Coast, and our fish are still chewing, and it's almost Christmas. I feel like 5-6 years ago that was not the case. We'd be on the ice, but we were out on Lake Erie in the Great Lakes, just last weekend. So it's
wow.
kind of cool to see this shift that we're seeing, especially in the Northeast.
Yeah. What was the water temperature out there on Erie?
I'm pulling it up right now.
Okay.
It was, when we were out there on Sunday, it was 42 degrees.
42. Yeah. We were out yesterday. It was about 57, 58, but we got a big cold front coming in right now. And Havasu gets to about, I've seen it like 48 and 49 degrees, about as cold as I've seen it. But usually, like in January, it hovers around 50 to 51 in that range. And man, it can be really good. There's certain windows when they bite like that, and you can catch them really quick, but then they shut down, and then you got to go find another group or something, and hope they're ready to bite at that time. It's fickle this time of year, It's just the window is so short in comparison to the regular season. When you're out there, in the springtime or summertime, which is all the time.
Yeah. I wonder if it has a lot to do with like the sun time as well, like how long the sun is out, like your daylight time, so that shortens those feeding windows.
Well, I think it does. I mean, they know that this time is coming. Obviously the days are getting shorter. There's a lot more darkness than there is light. Last month on the full moon, I went fishing like 4 nights in a row at night fishing, and I was still in like shorts and like a long sleeve tee. It was really comfortable still. But man, they chewed. I mean, they wouldn't bite during the daytime, but in the night, I mean, they were just chewing, and they're all like 4 and 5, 6 pounders. It was amazing. When you fish at night, it's like a different class of fish that bite at night than they do during the daytime. And the way they hit the bait, it's so aggressive in comparison to like when you're fishing daylight. It's not a mushy feeling. It's when they get it, they get it. It's cool.
Awesome.
I first started fishing at night probably 3 years ago when up in the Northeast in early August, things were really tough, pretty stingy, especially that's when our pressure is at an all-time high in terms of fishing pressure, all the different variables there. But I tried fishing at night, and it was like completely eye-opening, like nature coming to life, and all these fish that were impossible to catch during the day, you were catching them by the 20s and 30s at night, and it just sounded like it was raining, and like cannonballs falling from the sky with the bait and busting on it. The topwater strikes were insane. Like exactly that point. Like it's kind of crazy at certain times of the year. Night fishing is unruly, but I'm kind of curious where you're at in the fall, because for us, it's usually the nastier the better in the fall for fishing. Is that stay true for you out where you're at?
Yeah, for our lake, I think it's different in a lot of ways, but Havasu was my training ground. Through the early years when I was, wanted to be a pro, I moved out here because it had all the great attributes that I would be facing throughout the country. But it's unique in the sense that the fish, they don't do well with pressure. There's not a lot of fish. I mean, there's a lot of them, but they're not like you guys have. You guys have a lot of fish in your lakes and so forth, but they can get real fickle, and when the lake's turning over, they don't want to bite. We go through the same process that you guys do in the regular lakes and rivers throughout the whole system. So, timing's a big thing. And for here, it stays warm so long that, I mean, it just drudges out in like September, October, and then usually the first week of November, it's not real good. It's horrible, because you need that cold break. And then we got it about, 2.5 weeks ago. And then, the water started to drop, and we were still in like 68, 67 degree water temperature. Yeah. And now we're like at 58 right now. So it dropped 10 degrees in about 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks. So it's getting shorter and everything. But this is one of my favorite times to go fishing now, because the smallmouth get real shallow here on Lake Havasu. And for whatever reason, the colder it is, the shallower they get. They love getting on those rock bars and those points that go way out. And you can catch them, cranking. You can catch them on a little jig, or whatever you want to do. You can catch them, and they're in. Here they'll start spawning in like February. So we're about 45 days, 60 days out before they start getting on the beds here.
Wow.
So and they'll get on about 53, 54 degrees. You'll see them up there, real shallow, and then I've seen them as early as the first week of February on beds here.
Yeah, that sounds about right for that water temp too. I see that a lot in Lake Erie and Buffalo. Like right as soon as the water hits 50,
really,
full moon or not, we'll start seeing them.
Yeah, they're coming. Yeah,
like in waves, thousands at a time. It's wild, and it lasts all the way through almost to July.
Yeah. Yeah, we went. I remember fishing up in Dunkirk there, and you guys were out of Buffalo.
I'm out. Yeah, Bailey just moved here, but yeah, I live about 8 minutes from Safe Harbor, Small Boat Harbor, or whatever it is. So
yeah. No, it's cool area up there. It's that's some big water, man. Whew.
yeah, so
There is, yeah.
fun.
It's scary, but kind of cool in the same fact. Like, yeah, you really can't take Mother Nature for granted on that big water. I mean, but Andy, how big were they on this past? Like 23-foot waves with that wind that we got.
Yeah, so we had hurricane force wind warnings on, was it Saturday? Yeah, Saturday, and I think the max gust in Buffalo was 73 miles an hour coming across the lake from the southwest. Yeah, the water sieged about 8 foot. So it came up about 8 foot in Buffalo Harbor and flooded everything with 20-footers. Yeah.
So all those rock breakers that you have out front there with the waves just going over the top of them?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, man. That's big.
Yeah, it's massive.
Yeah.
So
there's like my buddy sent me a video. He drove by the lake just to go see what it looked like. And he went up and there's like this almost 10-foot bank up on top, and you can go down to the beach where obviously the lake's at. And his truck was up on top, parked next to his bank, and he was just getting swamped with waves.
Oh, with water. Wow, man.
It was insane, the video he sent me.
Yeah, that's
pretty crazy. But before we get too deep into tonight's show, Dean, because I've listened to a bunch of the shows that you've done, and I've always been really intrigued in learning from you and listening to the shows where you've had on, especially like BTL, where you've dove into different techniques and such. But I don't believe I've ever gotten to know really your start into bass fishing, like your first fish you ever caught, like the day one. And obviously, I don't want to go on for too long about this because I'm sure you get asked all the time. But I'm just super curious, who got you into it, that whole story.
Yeah, so I grew up in San Diego, California, and obviously that's not a hotbed for bass lakes. The lakes we have are real small. But I caught my first bluegill. I was probably around 9 or 10 years old. My older brother Jim, we used to ride our bikes to a kids lake named Choice Lake, which is you had to be 15 or younger to be able to fish there. So they would stock it with trout, and stuff. But we would go catch bluegill, and I remember as a kid during that time, you'd see the older kids, which were older to me. They were probably 12 or 13 years old at the time, but they were fishing for bass, and I'd watch them catch them. And a bluegill's a little bluegill, a bass is a bass, and so there's a distinct difference there. And I remember watching him catch one, and it's still in my mind. I mean, it's so cool. And I just thought, man, what a beautiful fish. I mean, they're just gorgeous. The water was clear, so their colors were really vibrant. And they had a big mouth, and they jumped, and all that stuff. And that's where I learned to fish. And then I just loved it. The challenge of it. I would ride my bike there after school every day. And as I grew older, 13, 14, you get friends there. So we'd ride our bikes together, and we'd fish all day. And every day during the summertime, we would go there every day and fish in the mornings. And then I'd come home and then go back in the evening for the evening bite, and I loved it. I loved it so much. It's all I wanted to do. And so during that time, you're reading the magazines, and back then, we had Field and Stream or Outdoor Life, and then you would have, U.S. Bass, and then you would have the Bassmasters magazine at that time. So, and I would, I used to go to the swap meet with my dad when I was younger, and we just walk around. I'd see all the fishing magazines there, and I'd buy a few, for a nickel or whatever it was. And I remember reading about the tournaments, and reading about the standings and everything, and looking at the prize money and everything. And then, and back then we didn't have cable television, okay? Because, I grew up poor in an area that I was at, so we didn't have that stuff. But it wasn't until we got cable when I was in my, late teens that we watched the TNN show where they showed the Bassmasters. They showed, the top 100, all that competitive fishing, Roland Martin, Jimmy Houston, Orlando Wilson, Bill Dance, all that stuff. And I would tape those shows on my VHS tape, it's the old school deal. And I would watch them over and over again and trying to figure out how in the heck did these guys get their own TV show. So they're obviously a way to make a living fishing, and that's what I want to do. And so I guess I was fortunate, I guess. In my early years of 15 or 16, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a professional angler. I mean, there was no doubt about it. But I didn't know how to go about doing it. I mean, like I said, San Diego is not a bed of where you can just hop on, the Bassmaster Tour and, and do that. So, but I worked 2 jobs. I saved all my money, to get a bass boat and started fishing the regional events throughout the whole West. I mean, it could be Northern California, Nevada, Arizona, Lake Havasu, Lake Mead, the California Delta, Clear Lake, Shasta, all those lakes. So I fished the whole Western region and through the WAN bass and try to learn as much as I could. I'd pick up a little sponsor here, a little bit of sponsor there, and I was doing well. Of course, I'd have some bombs too. Obviously, I'm learning. But as it got more and more, then I started guiding at home, and because I was working 2 jobs, but I can make more money guiding. And so for me, there was, my ultimate goal was to be a professional angler. So everything else was sacrifice, or if it didn't help me get to that point, I wouldn't do it. So everything that I was doing was funding my dream, and my goal was to get to the Bassmaster Tour. And I had in my mind I was going to move to Texas, and I was going to go do the whole thing because there was no tournaments out west. And then in 1997 they opened it up, and they had a Western division for the Open. So at the time they were the Invitationals, and that's what we were chomping the bit for, because I knew when those 3 tournaments showed up out west, that was my ticket. That was my ticket to back, because they would take they would take 15 qualifiers to go back to the top 150 tour. So I knew right then and there, this is it. So I did everything I could, and I qualified the first year in the Invitationals. And what you don't know about the Invitationals is you fish pro on pro. There's no pro and amateur. So you got 2 guys that are gunslinging down. I mean, you're going head to head, on the whole deal. So it's challenging, but I loved it because I learned a lot from different guys, because they do different techniques. And so for me, fishing those lakes and managing time and learning what, making decisions on the water, ultimately, was good. I qualified. I didn't qualify for the Classic that year, but I qualified for the top 150. So at that time, I didn't know how I was going to do it. If I had to go in debt, I didn't care, because that was my ticket. I mean, I was going to go and compete at the top, the highest level ever. And I've worked, my whole life to get there. And I ended up getting there when I was 26 years old. I fished my very first one. And I'll never forget this, because it's a cool story, guys. The first one I ever fished, I lived, and at that time I moved to Lake Havasu because it was good training ground. For me, we have northern strain bass here in San Diego. We had Florida strain. So, the northern strain are a lot more aggressive when it's colder out. But the first event that I had to go to was at the Potomac River. So if you look at a map from, bottom corner, I mean, you go, it's on the other side of the continent,
It's like what, 3,500 miles or something?
Yeah, it was crazy. Mm-hmm. Then I had to go at that time. I was sponsored by Skeeter at the time, and they wanted me to swing by the factory and all that stuff. But making that trek up there, and I was just so excited, but scared, terrified. I'd never seen this place before. And I had maps, and I had all this stuff laid out, and I didn't really care. All I wanted to do was catch a limit. That was my goal, because I'm going to a place I've never been to before. It's tidal. I don't ever fish tides, right. You don't fish that stuff. And so I remember the first day I caught my limit, and I was just so excited. And I think it weighed like 9 pounds. And I was hovering around, 50th place or something like that. And so it was a 2-day event. And then if the third day, actually it was a 3-day event, and then the final 10 fished on the final day. But I remember the last day, when I weighed in my fish that day, that first day, and I had a 9 pounds, and I'm waiting at the tanks, and I'm walking up, and there's all these people, and I just feel this chill about me, because I'm actually going to weigh in, at my first tournament as a pro. And I go to the tanks, and Denny Brower's in front of me, and Rick Clum's over here, and Larry Nixon's right here. I mean, these are guys that I idolize, and these are guys that I watched on television and read all these articles, and I'm here now. I'm amongst them, and for me, it was an incredible moment, because I had reached my goal of getting to this level. I mean, of course, I had other goals too, but that was such a big feat, to do that and to get there. And so for me, it was, I'll never forget it. It's embedded in my mind, on just the images that I can bring up in my mind and think about it, what it all looked like and how I felt that day.
That's pretty wicked. I love to hear like these early stories before there was live streams, before there was, these tournament coverages that we can just, look up on YouTube and watch now. These stories, because it keeps it going in the sport, because with that, us being in, like we talked about technology early on, right? This being in this day and age of technology, not having those recordings, it's like, it's hard for folks to remember. So if we can keep bringing up these stories and more folks remember and tune back, and I would have killed to be in some of these boats with these guys going head to head, pro and pro.
Oh, yeah.
I would just to have a seat, just popcorn to watch these guys. That would be awesome. Like if that would and then I believe you and Mark have talked about it on BTL of how great TV that would be nowadays. That would be incredible. But yeah, it's cool to hear about that. So thank you for sharing.
No, you're welcome. And the coolest part about that whole thing is I end up cashing a check in that event. They paid 40 places and I finished 26th in that event. And again, I caught a 4-pounder. I got lucky or whatever, however it went by. And I remember when I got my plaque, because they gave plaques away, and I got my $4,000 check. Okay. My entry fee was like, I don't know, $1,500, whatever it was back then. And that was on Friday afternoon. I left Potomac River on Friday afternoon at 6 p.m. and headed home. And I pulled into Havasu on noon on Sunday. I was so excited that I drove all the way across the whole country and wanted to get home. Of course, I was a zombie when I got home. I was worthless because I just, I've been, drove 2,000 miles. But every time I would get tired, I'd look over at the trophy and the check or the plaque, and it would just, and I would start thinking about, how this is awesome. I can do this, and it was just such a great time in my life during that, because of just, reaching those goals and just always achieving and moving up and cherishing those moments, because those are the ones that make the journey great, and those are the ones that you remember.
Heck yeah. Andy, were you going to add something in there? I feel like I cut you.
Yeah. So fun little sidebar question. How much of a pain was it traveling from Arizona to the Potomac? Because I think you said that was 97, 98 with the MapQuest printout from like the dial-up internet. How many exits did you miss from Arizona to the Potomac while trailing a boat 3,000 miles across the country? Because we're talking about electronics and technology. We didn't have cell phones with Google Maps and Apple Maps. And as somebody who drove from Buffalo to Arizona with my mom when I was a young kid, I know the pains of missing exits on the throughway. So I'm just curious if you can recall.
I had a really big road atlas is what I had. Okay.
Perfect. Like the big fold-out book?
Oh, yeah. So I could see everything. I'm like, I need to get there. So I draw a line. I'm like, how can I,
Yeah.
But believe me, thank God for GPS now, because I always got lost. Okay. I always missed the exit. I always, and I spent more time double back and trying to find, where was that. And I just, once we got in our boats and then we got in our cars, now it's just like you type it in and it sends you there, but my gosh, it's so much easier now than it was, because it was such a pain back then, because, you had nobody, you didn't, a cell phone back then. I mean, you didn't have that, it was just different, but you managed, and it was just a way of just doing it. And, and you watch, like, now the guys on tour now, they're just so savvy when it comes to all that stuff, and they're up on it all. And it's just, and it's the sign of the times. It's where you're in your prime when you're coming into a sport or a career, or whatever it is. And, they've been around that stuff a lot. I mean, when I went to Potomac, I didn't have a graph. I had a flasher up front. I mean, because I was a shallow water guy, and that's what I did. And because the water's so clear out here, I could see the bottom, so I didn't need one. I knew how deep it was. If I didn't, I just stuck my rod in the water to see if it was dirty or not. I would know. But but that's the simplicity of it all. In comparison to today, where we have active target, we have stuff that shows in front of us. We know where to cast, we know where the brush pile is at, where the channel is at, where the fish are swimming at now. And we never had any of that. I mean, we just we saw grass. It was just so different than it is today. And there's just so much technology out there now today that, you know, a lot of guys, it makes average guys that go out and fish good fishermen now, you know. So it helps them because of the electronics, you know, they assist you in a way that you can knock back the time and stay in the competitive area more than you normally would.
Yeah, that's really good. So really fast, because it brought it up and I got this idea in my head. And so obviously, and the reason we got you on here today, or quite frankly, is because we want this topic of when should you be throwing power? You know, when should you be power fishing? When should you be finesse fishing? When to know when to switch from vice versa. And we thought, who better than Mr. Dean Rojas to get on here and talk about it, because you're very good at both. But I will say, and what majority of your shows that folks get you on is talk about frog fishing. And I will guarantee you right now, we are not going to talk this entire show about frog fishing. I promise you.
That's okay.
I have one curious question, because I've seen some folks use it with topwater. But have you ever used? You mentioned active target. Have you used active target with frogs at all? Have you had any use for that?
No, I don't, because most of the stuff that I fish has grass and it just blocks it all out. I mean, you can't see anything. And for me, the frog stuff's more of a visual thing. It's surface visual. So what I do is I visualize what's underneath the water, you know, because, you know, we're fishing duckweed. I mean, you guys fish up there in those north lakes up there, and, you know, you have a lot of just duckweed, moss, you know, cheese, if you want to call it, any kind hydrilla, I mean, milfoil, whatever it is. I mean, you have all that stuff. And for me, I look for access points to where it's the easiest way to fish to come up and grab the frog. So yes, they love mass. I get that. I love, you know, but it's very time consuming. I like to be in areas where I can fish a little pocket or a little hole in the grass, you know, or a little point, or you can tell when there's, you know, on a wing dam or something, you know, where you have a little bit of rock come out and there's not grass there, you know. So you look for those little sweet spots that where the fish are just sitting right there in the grass, you know, next to the rocks, and you throw in that open area and they smoke it, you know. So that's what I like to do, as opposed to just, you know, heaving it over a mat and sitting there chugging it, you know, across the whole deal, because you miss a lot of those fish because there's so much debris on the surface. They end up either punting it, you know, or they grab it and maybe the frog turns over, it gets in a weird direction. They go clamp down and you set the hook and it comes flying out, you know. And so I'm all about having the fish have a clear path to the bait. There's nothing in the way, you know. And I don't care if I have to walk it off the mat and then slow it down once they get in that open water, because I know when he gets it, he's going to get it, and I'll get him when he does that.
Yeah. I just had to ask, because I've seen some guys that you can turn your radius of your forward facing sonar, whichever brand you want to use, to see topwater and use topwater baits with that forward facing. But I was like, I've never heard of anyone doing it with frogs. I'm like, if anyone has, it's got to be Dean. So I had to ask. Just in case.
The only time I could see it really being like applicable is if you're fishing like pencil reeds and there's no like grass covering the surface, and you're like 4 to 6 foot of water just kind of panning around. That might work with like a popping frog.
Yes, you know, and I caught them schooling like that on the frog as well. When they get really good and they're schooling, you know, I'll catch them on a frog, you know, a shad pattern like a killer gill or something like that, because there's no better thing than casting it out there and you know, popping it and dancing and doing all this stuff, and the fish eats it, and you got 80-pound braid. I mean, it's a set hook and it's just whine, you know. I mean, like,
no troubles.
No, nothing. You got them, you know. They're coming in the boat, you know. So, and I've done that in a tournament. I've done that in a tournament a bunch of times, and man, you could load the boat in a hurry. I mean, it is, and like you said, no trouble hooks, no nothing, man. When you got them, and just, you know, fix it back up and fire back out there again, because you can work it like a popper, you know, popper type bait, or you know, you can walk it, you can chug it, you can spit, whatever you want to do. And that's the great thing about all the different styles that we have in Spro for the frogs.
Heck yeah. So, and that there really kind of leads us into what we really wanted to talk about today, and knowing that, and there's a lot of folks that have confidence baits, right? Baits that always work for them, but there's definitely a time when it calls for power fishing, and there's a time when you need to slow down and be a little bit more finesse. And really to start this conversation, you know, say you're going to fish a brand new body of water, And before you even launch the boat, say maybe you're getting some rods out to kind of start just on your notions of you're pulling up to the ramp, you see the lake at first glance, you're about to pull out some rods. What signs are you looking for to kind of get a figure of if you think you're going to lean more towards power or towards finesse? Like, do you have a process of kind of getting a start of what you're going to be throwing?
Yeah, time of year is a big thing. That's usually, I mean, you say, pulling up to a lake. There's a lot of things that go into that, which goes into making a decision on where you're going to start and what you're going to do, because a lot of that you have to, look at it in the aspect of, do I want quality or do I want quantity? If it's usually, in the cold months, like if it's like pre-spawn or spawn, heck, I mean, the first 4 or 5 months of the year when the fishing is good, I always like to find like riprap and bridges and where there's where it bottlenecks down, because usually those are the access points where the fish come up and they feed in the morning and they'll go right back down again. And so those are the areas that I like to do because, in the springtime, the females are going to be setting up there, coming off of the deal before they go back into the creeks or the pockets, because usually you have a lot of that in throughout the lakes that we fish, the river systems and a few reservoirs as well. But it's always a navigation area for them. So they're always going in and out of there, whether they're coming in to spawn or they're leaving to come spawn, they have to go by there. Okay, so you can catch them in the morning, you catch them in the afternoon, and I can't. So that's always a high percentage spot to start on when you don't know, the lake very well. Marinas, outside of the marinas, are always good, just because it offers a lot of shade, it offers a lot of cover. There's a lot of attributes that the fish like to sit around. So if you were to just go to a brand new lake and you look at it and you're like, okay, well, it has, this and that. It's got, docks, they're going to be on docks. But are they going to be next to the ones that go, way out? Or are they going to be next to the channel bands? So, and those are all things that you have to break down, when you're practicing, and that's where the power fishing comes in. Okay. So at our level, what we do, and this goes with all those guys, all the top tier guys, they have a system. We all have systems on how we try to break down the lake, trying to figure out where they're at, where they're positioned. Do they like, the big flats? They like if there's a lot of grass or hydrilla or milfoil, or is there, just docks galore, so each lake is different. And in their mind, you're going through everything, all your experiences and all of the things that you've seen and done where you've caught bass. And it teaches you, how to read the water when you're driving, like docks, for instance. I'll just give you on that. When you're going down a lake, you can tell how deep the water is around the docks by how big the docks are. If you see a dock that's really long, goes way out there, it's probably pretty shallow out there, especially if they have a lot of water fluctuation. So they'll be 4 or 5 feet, and then they'll be like, no, it'll be dry. But the shorter the docks, the deeper the water that's next to them. Okay, so those are the keys that you want to look towards. For certain times of the year, that there'll be a stretch of dock where the channel comes by, and it'll drop off into 15, 18 feet of water on right there at the end of it. And those are high percentage spots. So that, because you've done it so many times. So you're like, okay, I got that, and that. And then, you're sometimes they're suspended up underneath them. Sometimes they're at the bottom. Again, time of year is a big thing, because, if you're throwing a shaky hit or a drop shot or a jig, you want to fish slow. But sometimes when the shadow's spawning, they're right up underneath it, suspended. So it's all a variance of what it has to offer. So, power fishing is a way of breaking down a lake very quickly. If you have baits that are surface 2 feet, 3, 4 feet, 6, 8, 10, and a slower presentation as well. So you could basically cover the whole water column in about 7 rods, and effectively, to where you can really figure out what the fish are doing. But you have to be a cue, and you have to watch the birds. You got to listen to the sounds. You got to watch the wind. I mean, there's a lot of things that you have to be noticed of, because all it takes is one little tip, and these guys will pick up on it. And it's happened to me hundreds of times, where you got it, and then all of a sudden you lock into it, and then it's like it's the deal. So you know exactly what to go do, and now you've created a pattern, and now it's just a matter of driving around trying to find more of this stuff, where if they're on the longer, docks instead of the steep ones, that's what you're looking for. And you go into a pocket fishing 3 or 4 of those long docks, and you may wander out just to check and make sure they're honest at times, but that's how you break it down. And with power fishing, you're able to do that because you're able to cover a lot of water very quickly.
Okay. So when you have that equation put together, right, and things are adding up, they're starting to make sense, but you're just not getting them to fire. I mean, when things make sense, and fish are around you. When do you know to put down the power and pick up, something finesse like a drop shot or a Nico or something along those lines? Like what's your first sign that tells you I need to put this rod down and give finesse a try?
Again, it depends on the lake. If it's got big ones, you want to throw big baits, obviously. But if we go to a spotted bass fishery, for instance, where there's a lot of them, you can always catch them on a Ned rig. You can catch them on a drop shot or a shaky hit. I mean, that's just standard. You can do all that. And that's a finesse way of fishing, and a lot of guys enjoy fishing finesse, which I grew up fishing it. I mean, it's not one of my favorites, but I'll do it, and I'm good at it. I'm not great at it like some of the other anglers, but I can hold my own doing it. And I enjoy power fishing. So for me, whatever lake you go to, and throughout the whole country, there are always fish that you can catch power fishing. Okay, there's always. It's just a matter of whether those are the right ones, to win the tournament with. And people ask me all the time, "Hey, Dean, did you catch them on a frog today?" I go, "Yeah, I caught 2 or 3." "Oh no, you're gonna crush them." I said, "No, it's not. I mean, I'm not catching the quality that I need because the guys, throwing a chatterbait or flipping or punching, they're gonna kill me because they're gonna catch 3.5 pounders or 4 pounders, and I'm catching these 1.5 pounders. So, you have to look at that and say, yes, there is a frog bite, but it's not going to get me anywhere. So I need to adjust and to change baits and so forth to do that because these guys are so good at this level that you have to catch them. And you have to catch good ones. And it's just a matter of it's not even like going out there and having fun because you're at it all the time trying to catch big ones. And then when you get on a bite, you only want to catch what you need and then get out of there because you got to save them for the next day or 2 days or 3 days or however what it is. So it's all that stuff is in your mind, and you're going through everything on making decisions out there that are going to be successful for you to have a good event or a great event or win the event.
Yeah. So you mentioned something about, when bigger fish are around, you throw bigger baits, and it kind of reminded me of this saying that people have had, and I've heard it, numerous times growing up, is that, when they're not eating something, to slow down or throw something smaller, something more finesse. But and there's times where I've experimented it and it's worked, but I'm kind of curious in your case, when things aren't working for you, are there times where you'll go on the flip side of that and go bigger and it'll produce bites versus of going smaller and something, slowing down?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I said. There's always on a body of water, you can always catch them on reaction baits or a big bait or whatever it might be. You just got to find the right area for that. And myself and there's other anglers that like to fish like I do. We always end up in the back of a creek or up the river somewhere 40 miles up there, and doing things that are different than what's down the main lake. And so for me, it's just trying to read the water and break it down. And what's funny is you say that throwing the small baits and stuff, and you would think like when we go to Florida and stuff, there's a lot of big fish down there, but I don't throw big baits in Florida. I throw a real small one. Growing up in San Diego, fishing for Florida strain, whenever there's they bite, but they'll bite the smallest baits. It's amazing. They'll bite a 2-inch bait or 3-inch bait. I make like a 7 or 8, 9 pounder. I mean, it's crazy.
Wow.
And that's what happens down in Florida. Some of the biggest bass I caught. Well, I can't say that because when I broke the record down there, I was throwing a 7-inch lizard on that point. But after that, when it gets tough, I usually tie on my little fighting frog from Big Bite, and we have a 3.5-inch. And dude, that little sucker gets bites, and that's what you want is to get constantly getting bites a bit, and to stay in tune where the fish are at, where they're positioned, and obviously with, the Bass Pro Tour, it's all about, the numbers and catching as many as you can and trying to get as many bites as you can.
Right.
So I've gone to a lot of the smaller baits now when I'm fishing. And, Bailey and Andrew, our lakes are just getting pounded right now too. There's a lot more tournaments. There's a lot more pressure on them. And I've really, kind of gone back to fishing the smaller stuff again, because I get more bites doing it, outside of frog fishing, but, it's just smaller baits. It works.
Right. Yeah, it's so I'm kind of curious then. You kind of alluded to it, but Dean, in terms of a fisherman, are you one where it's not more of a bait selection, but you're going to more move areas to find more active feeding fish than really try to experiment with a bait lineup?
Okay, so if we're talking about a lake that I've never been to before, I wouldn't know where to go to try to do all that. So, but if say I've gone to a lake where I've fished multiple tournaments there for over the years, and so there are areas that I know that are traditionally where bigger fish are. So it's not that I would always go there, but it's in my game plan of eventually getting to that point of going in that area. And then of course I practice there, and you'll find them and everything, and you kind of know what to look for. But it's all about managing them. If that makes any sense, it's just about managing your areas and managing the lake that fits your style to see you through the whole event. Because we fished 3 rounds of qualifying and a semifinal, and then a big one, and then the finals, and that's a lot. And the pattern's always changing. And so some of the hardest lessons I've learned frog fishing is they don't always bite. They don't bite the frog 7 days a week. It's very, very difficult to do that on a frog bite, because they bite it real good when there's a low pressure, if there's high winds, or if there's just a lot of just moving around. They eat it good. But man, when it stops and it gets flat and bright, it's like somebody flipped the switch. I mean, they don't want to come up for it. So it's always like some of my best tournaments have been when it's been like that, sunny and bright during practice, and it gets nasty during the tournament. That way I'm on the front side and I power through it. And that way I can catch, frogfish 4 or 5 days in a row. But usually it doesn't work that way. Usually you get 2 days of really nasty weather and they bite it real good. You'll have 2 days of clearing, and then it just, it goes away. So the conditions of the weather are such a big factor on positioning of the fish in their strike zone, whether they're going to be, they'll run, when it's cloudy, they'll run 2 or 3, 4 feet to get a bait. When it's sunny out, they're going to be in the shade. They're only going to go a foot and a half if they have to, unless you have wind, and so they're not going to, it's just, you have to adapt to that. And that's where, you slow down your finesse, target fishing, you're picking your spots on where to cast.
That makes sense. Cool. So when you're power fishing, obviously people, they talk about, especially frog fishing, right? They talk about a follow-up bait. Do you have a follow-up bait that you as like a go-to, or maybe one that is overlooked?
I don't know if it's yeah, I do. Yes, I do. I have 2 follow-up baits that I normally use if I'm on a good frog bite, and because sometimes they just miss it, man, or sometimes they don't want it. They'll hit it with their tail. Yeah, exactly, Andrew. They'll hit it with their nose. I've watched them so many times hit it. They never open their mouth. They just punt it in the air, And so, it's not the frog's fault. You just didn't eat it, So, and especially like in the springtime, when the largemouth are up shallow, it's a great, deal to throw a frog when they're up there shallow, because they bite it really good. But there are a lot of times where they go up and they swipe at it, and they go, man, he missed it, or I had him. No, a lot of times they hit it with their tail, or they just roll underneath it, and the whole thing, it'll hump up like that, and they don't want it. They want to scare it out. They want to get it out of the area. Is basically what they want,
Yeah.
So when you have but the greatest thing about that is it showed you where they're at. So a lot of times I throw a frog in the springtime, and because I want them to show themselves to me. I want to, and I bend my hooks down, so even if they do get it, I don't hook them anyways, So, but I can't tell you how many times I've done that and gone back in the tournament, and see the little, whatever that little point or whatever it was, and throw the frog back up in there in 2 twitches, and he comes out and unloads on it, but I would have never known that if, I wouldn't have, located them there. So the frog is like a tool for me, for when, just to locate them and see how they're reacting, if they're on the grass line, if they're on the rocks, so it's telling me, what I need to be doing. And then, obviously in tournament mode, if I'm throwing the frog and they're blasting it or lifting it, I always have a backup bait. And the number one thing I always do, I always throw back in there again. When I miss them, I throw the frog back in there again, and I slow it down. I mean, like it injured it, or just where I'll let it sit there and just do one twitch, make it walk over here, and then walk it that way, and just daring them to come get it. You know what I mean? And so that if that doesn't work, then it's bringing it up, and then in my little big fighting frog, my little 3.5 incher, I'll pitch it up in there, and usually, it's about a 30 or 40% chance you're going to get one at that point. And then they make also a trick stick on top of that, and I'll throw that in there with a lightweight. So, and then again, it all depends on the cover. If it's a lot of grass or wood, so a lot of that stuff, you want something that's going to come through there.
Heck yeah, I think that's one that I think folks have really talked about, but that not enough people really implement into their practice in any scenario of like when you're getting blow ups, you'll throw back in there. But then times where like, oh, maybe he just doesn't want it, and then they'll keep going down that bank. Whereas, like you mentioned, you could throw back in there. If he doesn't eat it, you can throw a different bait in there, and that can trigger maybe not that fish, but maybe that fish was being followed by another fish, and that triggered a really different bite. But I think that's just something that people overlook in general is how crucial that follow-up bait can really be, especially with a top water. And that can obviously, and that can go for a spinnerbait bite, chatterbait bite, a couple things that people really don't look into. But
usually when I'm power fishing like that, I let them tell me what they do. And obviously getting the first bite is crucial. Okay. But if you get a second one, I mean, like very quickly or the next, 15 minutes or 20 minutes after that, doing the same thing, you can always tell by the way they're hooked too, whether they want the bait or they're swiping at it. But usually that's at that point, once you get 2 bites on doing the same deal, then you're onto something. Once, you get a suicide fish every now and again that, bombs your bait, whatever, or hits it on the sink. That's the worst when they hit on the sink. It doesn't tell you anything. So, but when you can, pick a bait, a crankbait, a spinner, whatever it might be, and you get 2 bites pretty quickly, then it's time to move on and try and find more of that stuff. And I have like a 10-minute rule that I learned from Kevin Van Dam early on. That's why he's always on the move. All the great ones are always on the move. And I've learned all that through my years of doing that. That if you're not getting bit within the first 10 minutes or 15 minutes, especially on smallmouth too, I mean they hit it instantly. I mean you're gonna know if they're there or not.
Yep.
So like 10 minutes is about 10-15 minutes maybe, and then you need to be either changing your bait or you need to be different technique, and then or just moving to the next spot or the next point or next dot, whatever it is, because you need to find them and find the areas where the fish are at.
For sure. Yeah, that's always a really tough dilemma, not only for myself, but I think for a good amount of anglers, and even some of the best, I'm sure, get torn with it. And I'm sure you kind of mentally struggle with it. Like, I think this is an occurring thing for everyone. There's people like yourself that are much better at making the decision than the rest of us, where it's, do I stay or do I keep looking? Am I, do I think, they might still be here? Should I just switch up baits? And it's always this decision of, should I just keep trying to look for more active fish, or should I try to, figure these fish out? But, that's what sets apart the pro anglers and successful anglers from the rest, is that decision-making process. But
keep everything honest.
Yeah. That's a great point, Andrew. A lot of that is just time on the water. And you see it, you see things and you feel things. I mean, it's weird how you spend so much time out there that you can almost feel stuff happening. And if you open it up, open your mind up to a lot of that stuff, because you'll see the wind, or you feel the wind, or temperature, whatever it might be, or the water, they start, the currents moving, whatever, so you're always trying to evaluate the situation you're in. And being keen and being, like right there at that moment, at that present time, and and when I do it every day, for 12, 14 hours a day, you get tuned to all that stuff. So, Bailey, you said that, it's hard for weekend anglers when they only fish, 3 times a month, on the weekend. It's hard to be that way. You just want to go out and catch some fish and have fun, and so you're trying different baits and trying different techniques and so forth, so it's hard. But for like the pro guys, the top tier guys, I mean, they're good at everything, and they can pick up, a drop shot with 6 pound and then, be punching with 80 on the backside. So, and everything in between. So it's just, hey, I love it, man. I mean, I'm always challenged, we get to fish against the best guys in the world.
Heck yeah. Yeah. And I think one thing that's super overlooked that Andy and I both agreed on was how good of a drop shot angler that you are and have been. And
Sidebar,
Andrew,
I did get to watch you fish a drop shot on the Niagara River a few years ago in the classic qualifying bracket.
Yeah.
How much
you were there,
fun.
Andrew?
Yeah, I was. I was chasing
Oh,
you guys around with my buddy Joe and a Nitro Z9. I think I was there all 3 days or 3 of the 4 days that you guys fished for like both morning and afternoon sessions. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Andrew, do you know Chris Seisner?
Yeah, I know Todd.
Or Todd
Sizer? Yeah, I know Todd.
Todd.
He used to be
he was there the whole time. He's a great dude. I like that guy.
He used to be our secretary for their bass club that I was just vice president in. So yeah, I know Todd. Bailey knows Todd pretty well too. So
yeah, but that tournament was cool because we had to fish the river. The heavy current too on top of that, and I just, I broke off so many, weights in the current and stuff. But you had to be in the Swift stuff, and I was paired up with Jordan Lee in that round, and that was pretty amazing because he had me beat until the last 10 minutes, and I beat him with 2 minutes to go. It was exciting, and that was
that the 4-pounder you caught off the intake?
Yeah,
if I remember correctly. Yeah, I was like, dang, he just exposed one of my spots. So
and
those
huge, that and the barge tie-ups or those big rock, they're just, I don't know if they're icebreakers or what they are, but they block the current, and smallmouth love being around all that stuff.
They're water intakes for a city about 30 miles from there.
Okay.
Believe it or not. Yeah. So
that was interesting. That was love. I mean, it was cool, man. That was Bass's attempt, at that time to experiment with the catch, weigh, and release format.
Yeah.
At the time, the Bass Pro Tour, gave them the scales and showed them how to do it and everything. So we were, trying to work together on all that. And that was the event that they, tested it on. And my boat official, if you will, was Trip Weldon. He's the tournament director for Bass, so I had to sit there in the boat with him. He's like, he doesn't say a whole lot. He doesn't get excited. He's just, he's a tournament director, so he's just numb to everything, But a great guy, great gentleman, and but he got to see it. And when I caught that fish and beat Jordan with 2 minutes to go, he goes, "Dang, Dean, that was really cool. That was really cool." I said, "Man, it's exciting, when you know what everybody else has."
Yeah.
And I mean, really, real time. It's not, Bass Track where it's a guess. I mean, this is what you got, and so and you see it play out, and that's what makes it so exciting.
Yeah, the highlight of that tournament was I think we chased Kobe Krieger around all over the river on like the final qualifying day to try to get the final round, and he was like trying to catch 1 12-inch fish, and I think he ended up catching like 1 or 2, but literally I think we chased him up and down the river 5 times from like bridge to bridge. They're like, gosh, that's 13 miles each way. Like you're wasting so much time.
That was the tournament at Porosnik. Didn't stop fishing. Remember that?
Oh yeah, I was right there.
Let him have it because he wanted to make the class.
There.
Yeah. I don't know.
it was wild. It was.
Oh yeah.
It was wild. But oh man,
it had to be a pretty unique fishery for you guys, because I think the only place that really comes close to that is maybe like a St. Lawrence River in terms of currents.
Yeah. And a St. Lawrence River where it gets real narrow where you have a lot of current, heavy currents. The St. Lawrence, it widens out at places so the current is not as swift. But that Niagara River, that sucker's rolling, man. It's got to go over the falls, so it's moving. Especially if it has a west wind and the water's pushing into it. It's rolling, man. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I love
but
that.
I love it.
Though.
It's awesome. It's a nice place to fish.
Yeah. So Andy, I got 2 questions left here for Dean. We're gonna let him go, but before I do, you have anything left for him?
I was gonna say what is your most underrated drop shot bait while we're talking finesse fishing here?
Most underrated, in my opinion?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Underrated.
Because everybody knows about flatworms, 3-inch shows, gulp baits. Maybe a big bite bait that could be really good.
Yeah, and they make a hand poured style, and I use a lot of hand poured stuff, a lot of custom stuff. And Big Bite, makes a lot of that stuff as well. But there's something about that soft texture and the salt and stuff. And I don't use it a whole lot, but when I need to, that's when I use on that. And it's just going back to my roots, growing out west. The fish are so heavily pressured in San Diego when I was growing up. If it didn't have 16 red sparkles in it and a perfect purple vein, you weren't going to get a bite. You know what I mean?
I think we're going Robo Worm here.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So you think of Robo Worm? Well, there's like 30 guys pouring the stuff in their garage.
Yeah.
That's encompassing all around. Robo Worm is just a big brand that you hear of, but there are countless custom hand poured companies out in the West. But there, it's all about the colors too and the shapes and so forth. But Big Bite's got the Smalley Slammer. I mean, it's a great little bait, and they also have the hand poured stuff. It's an injection mold, but it's real super soft, like it tears real easy, which is what you want, and all the great colors as well. So it's just a smorgasbord, whatever. And you got to think about it. I mean, if they're on the smelt, or they're on the gulp, or the goalbies, you got to think about colors and where you're doing, in different ways. There's times where they just want a different color.
Yeah, I think the Robo Worm has become a staple for a lot of tournament anglers, especially in a largemouth fishery.
I love Robo Worm.
Robo Worm.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, they were around 25 years ago. When I was growing up, they were already there. And so, it was just cool. So, it's just cool in that era of the hand poured custom stuff, and with myself and Skeet and Ish and Aaron Martins, we all came back and fished, on the tour and everything. So, that's where Aaron did so well, and a lot of those events, and basically introduced the whole country to drop shotting, because he was phenomenal, and I fished against him probably a couple thousand days, because he only grew up 100 miles from me. So we were always competing against each other, throughout my whole life, because we were always competed, and there were a lot of times he beat me like a drum, man. I mean, he's a great angler, it's just really keen on picking things up.
The little drop shot shake.
Yeah, that's it.
Can't beat it.
I know. It's, So.
Yeah. Well, Dean, we don't want to keep you for too long. We really appreciate you taking time out of your time to come join us. But I got 2 last questions for you. And I know I promised I wouldn't ask too many questions about frog, but this last one is about a frog, because Andy and I are both curious, and I think a lot of people are too, because it is newer to the market, and it's the new Spro flapping frog.
Yeah.
We're kind of just curious. We know how you're a wizard with the popping frog and that regular walking frog. We're curious where this is going to fall into your lineup of where you choose that flapping frog over the other two, in terms of when you're going to obviously choose it, what scenario, what conditions, what are you going to be looking at?
It's interesting you asked that, Bailey, because we were going to come out with a bait like that about 6 years ago. We were always exploring different things on how we can do different actions on the bait, of course the horny toad type of, you're winding type of frog bait that kicks and stuff. So we did all that stuff and looked into all that stuff and what we wanted to do. And we're like, well, no, let's just stay what we're good at with what we're doing. Let's just create more colors, more designs of our bronzeye, our poppin' frog, king daddy, different stuff, the spit shad, all that stuff. We went through all that whole arena of, we wanted to be your one-stop shop when you wanted to buy a frog, okay, which is Spro. That's what you want. So, and then it came out because the amount of people that have asked about it, and that's something we do very well at Spro, is we pay attention to our customers and what they want, because not everybody can make a frog walk and dance and chug and do all that stuff, and we want you to have a positive experience, when you're fishing a frog. So we knew we needed it, and it was a matter of designing it. The plastic that's on that particular bait is stretchy. It doesn't tear. I mean, you hook a pike on it or something like that, or or a muskie or something, it's gonna chew it in half. But it's designed to easily fish, throw it out there. It's not gonna get hung up, and for you just to wind it, and it's a visual thing. So people love to watch their bait on the cross of the water. So that's what we did. And so, like I said, it's soft, it's pliable. It carries a great Gamakatsu hook in it, and it's designed a little bit different than what we got, but it's designed to track straight. It's not designed to go side to side. You want it to track, right back to you. So, little attributes like that, and we're just trying to fill the void of areas. And we've got like 2 more that we're coming out with that we've been working on. That's coming down the pipeline too.
Ooh, okay, something to keep a lookout for. All right, Dean's putting out teasers on us now, so everyone's got to keep a look.
You can't stop. You can't stop because the other companies, they've jumped on the train now, and they've all got their frogs, but Spro's still number one, and we want to stay number one, and keep creating, and building the best, top water hollow belly baits on the market.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't really, I mean, Andy, I don't think we really throw any other frog besides a Spro. So it's for me, I will, especially when it's, a spawn for largemouth fisheries, I'm going to always have a killer gill popping Spro popping frog on all the time, up until the fall. But we want to close this one out with our question that we have for everyone that's new to the show. That's what we like to do to just for fun, spur of the moment, and kind of see what the answers are for folks. And we'll close with this. And our last question for you is, if you could sit down, have a nice steak and a beer with 3 individuals, they could be alive 1,000 years ago or today, doesn't matter. Doesn't have to be the fishing industry, but if you could sit down with 3 individuals, have a beer and a steak, and pick somebody's brain, who are you going to invite?
Oh man, that's a big question on that. It's I don't know. It's
that's
like,
not an acceptable answer, Dean.
I know it's not. I know, Andrew. I know. That's like, you gotta cut me for that one too next time, Bailey. Okay, because then I could give some names. Now I'm like, blank.
That's the best part about it. It's the reaction because you're unaware of the question that is coming. So,
yeah,
I think we live for this part.
Golly, I think that I'm like a historian and stuff, so I think maybe a couple of the past presidents. I think I would like to sit down and just talk to them, and pick their brain about the country, or how we interact with other countries, and how all that stuff works. I love all that stuff on the intricacies of working with that. Fisherman wise, I'd love to spend a day on the water with Kevin Van Dam. I've never got to fish with him. Because you get to fish with a lot of guys, just up for photo shoots or fun stuff. But I'd like to do that. Rick Clunn, on that aspect, I guess the fishing side. But people wise, I don't know.
Did you ever have like an athlete or anyone growing up that you really looked up to?
A lot of them, I'm talking about working and stuff. I worked at San Diego Jack Murphy Stadium, where the San Diego Chargers played, and the San Diego Padres. So I would go around selling peanuts and Cracker Jacks in and around the stands. So I would work in the evenings during the games, and then I'd go fishing during the daytime. So that was part of my deal there. So I got to see a lot of the big players, and when Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa did all those home runs, because we had the All-Star game there, watching them just hit them out of the park, like they were candy. that was an amazing time, to see all that. I mean, they were on the juice, obviously, but
Oh,
it was cool to watch them, just knocking them out of the park, So,
oh
you get
man.
to see some really cool things. That was a cool job because I got to be around, people that were, passionate about sports and stuff. But it's cool, dude. This is life, man. I've seen so much and done so much. It's just a lot. It's a lot of it. I can pick out 1,000 of these moments because they're just cool. That's so cool about this job. You get to go to the whole country. Some of the cool places. We went to South Dakota for Lake Wahi and the Bassmaster event. That was, it was awesome up there. I'd never been to up there before, and fishing Maine, Florida, California, Oregon. I mean, every state is cool here in the United States. It's awesome.
Heck yeah.
We're truly blessed with
Yes.
the diversity of the country we have from a
Mhm.
nature aspect.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's awesome.
Yeah, it is. It is. We're grateful. And that's why I've been doing it a long time, and I love it, and competing against the guys and stuff. And at this level, it's just, it's awesome.
Heck yeah. Well, Dean,
Mhm.
seriously, we appreciate you taking time out of your night to sit down and
Thank
talk with us and drop some knowledge on everyone and these two fools that you're talking to through a laptop screen right now. We do sincerely appreciate the time, and we hope to get you back on the show here soon. But seriously, thank you, and we appreciate you joining in here.
Yeah, Bailey, thank you for the invite. Andrew, thank you very much, and it's cool
My
talking to you guys.
Yeah.
I enjoy doing this. So if you guys, you want to pop on, 3 or 4 months from now or whatever, just give me a call. It'll be cool just to sit and talk. And you guys are cool dudes anyway, so I don't mind
thanks.
talking. It's good. Yeah.
Yeah, we'd love to get you on, and dude, I'll be down working the Red Crest, so hopefully at some point I'll come
Sweet.
say hello, and maybe we'll get you on after that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'd say
that'd be good.
even after the BBT goes to Cayuga this summer, if I remember correctly, right? So maybe after that as well, like a New York recap.
Yeah, I want to go back to Oneida again. I want to go to Onondaga. I want to go. There's a lot of places I want to go up there because it's good fishing, man.
Holler at us because those are my stomping grounds growing up. Those were the
Sweet.
lakes I grew up on, and Cayuga especially. So if you're ever out this way and you're free, holler at us.
I guide on Erie, so like it's fun. Yeah,
that's awesome. And Todd Seisner, so that's even cooler.
Yeah, Todd's a good dude.
Yeah. He's a good
I'll
dude.
be Todd here soon. I hope so. I've worked a couple events with Todd doing PR in the fishing industry, so it's it's kind of just funny that we realized we didn't click until last spring when I started working in the PR industry that we literally lived like right down the road from each other. And we're like, oh, this will make things easy because you're in PR. It was cool. But yeah, Dean, seriously.
Tell Todd I said hi.
We'll do.
Yeah.
We will do. We'll have to get everyone together when you're up here for the Cayuga event and get the.
That'd be fun. He's a hoot, man. He's cool. I enjoy hanging out with him. He can tell some stories about me, I'm sure, but that's probably for another show.
Maybe we'll have you on after Red Crest and get Todd on here as a surprise guest. And
yeah, that would be fun. He'd love that.
He would. All right, Dean. We appreciate it.
All right, guys.
All right,
thank you.
You have a good night.
You too.
Take care.
Bye.
Dude, it's that was a lot of fun with Dean, and I have to say big thank you to Fred Kintawi, who not at this past year's classic, but the previous year before COVID, really took off at Gunnersville. That's where I met Dean for the first time. Was back when I was working for Douglas Rods. Fred actually he just basically grabbed me by the arm. He was the rod designer. Well, is the rod designer for Douglas. He yanked me through the Classic Expo and introduced me to a whole bunch of people. That's where I got to meet Dean, and he's been a good dude ever since. So we really appreciate him joining in and dropping some knowledge because, Andy, honestly, this whole power versus finesse, what to do when, make this decision I think it's my biggest, hurdle, but I say that as in it's like a personal problem when really that's just an angler problem. That's like even the best of the best face that.
We all struggle with it. Absolutely.
That's the biggest hurdle in fishing, in my personal opinion. It's what to do when. No one knows. There's no right answer. You could go and make the, right decision, right, and go and catch a 30-pound bag, but you could have made a better decision and caught a 40-pound bag. Like it's just, it's you'll never know.
Or in one area, you could be on a 20-pound bag bite in practice, and then you're like, I'm going to catch them on a jig, flipping weed lines in 12 foot of water, and all of a sudden they stop eating it. And you're 7 hours in, you're sticking to your guns, and you zero. And all you had to do was pick up a drop shot, and you can catch that 20-pound bag just because they want something slower. So,
is crazy though. Like people in practice, I mean, I'm guilty of it. I've done it a few times where it's like, even in practice, or even if it's a day, multiple day event, you're on day one, like you find a specific bite and it's going on, conditions completely change, and you expect that bite to still be there. And you go back and it's not there, and you're like, I don't understand why it won't bite.
yeah.
But you're too focused on history and not focused on what the conditions are telling you.
So sidebar, well, not even a sidebar. Note 1 right there. We as fishermen on a body of water rely too much on history than fishing in the moment. And I think it bites a lot of us in the back, especially like young anglers like you and I, Bailey. We have history on some bodies of water to where we can get tied into a certain thing because it worked 3 out of 4 times or 3 out of 3 times. And then the 4th time we go there and we're like, oh, they're not biting this today. What do I do now? So, and I think that's where practice and time in the water comes into play, because the more experiences we have on these bodies of water, the more we can articulate our game plan while we're on the water and make really good sound judgments. And it always trusting our gut, but making sound, quick, timely adjustments while on the water to figure out what they're doing. And I mean, I personally think I'm guilty of changing up too fast. I'll put 20 rods on deck and I'll flip through all of them in the first 40 minutes if I don't get bit till I get bit on something. Then where I struggle is once I get a bite, I use that same rod all day long.
But I will say, Andy, to give yourself credit, I have seen times where you've picked something up, caught a few fish on it right away, and even after you just threw a fish back in, you'll change completely because something else told you different, and then you catch bigger fish. Like it's just they're making the right adjustments. You might be doing something, catch a lot of fish, but you need to know that there could be an adjustment that could be a better adjustment. Just because you're catching fish, and it all pertains to the format you're fishing, what your goal is that day. If you're fun fishing and you're catching a crap ton of them, and that's might all be what you want to do, then hey, that's fine. But like in most cases, there will be a better adjustment to the adjustment you already make, and that's why fishing is so fun. Is because there's like we talk about all the time. There is no book. There's no clear cut. There's no crystal ball. It's awesome because there's so many different variables that come into play.
It's all about keeping it honest. And I can think of like 2 different times this year where we've done something like that. Like the one was the one tournament that we won, and we're flipping grass, and all of a sudden I just picked up a chatterbait. Like, well, God, they're going to eat it right now because something changed in the barometric pressure, and I think that was our biggest fish of the day. I only got one bite on it, but I was like, and I put it right back down. And I think I picked something else up, like within like 5 casts after. I was like, oh, they're not going to eat it again. But like, it's just you have to keep things honest. And that's why I like people make fun of me or whatever, because I have 100 rods on my deck at the end of the tournament day, but I think I will cast every one of those rods at least one time.
There's usually like 1 or 2 rods you're going to use for 95% of the day,
Yeah.
but then there's those rods that you only make 3 or 4 casts with, but can produce a huge part of your day in terms
It's like,
of
you know what? This dock or this laydown right here has the wind blowing in on it. This angle, I'm going to get bit on a spinnerbait. So I'll dig through there, grab a spinnerbait that I have tied on, whip it in there 2 times. And either I get bit or I don't, but then it'll sit on the deck the rest of the day until that one situation arises where it looks right for that bait. And it all comes down to time on the water. I was blessed this year to have a lot more time on the water than normal. So I felt way more in tuned, and it was quite nice to not be chasing my tail for once. So
yeah, you got some time to go looking and not just trying to catch fish.
exactly. And
It's
now next
crazy.
summer, even more time.
Isn't it crazy now to see, when you put in the time to look for stuff, what the results can produce?
Yeah, it's nice. Like I think I went from like 500 waypoints on Erie to close to 2,000 now.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah,
Just
the SD card's full, and I'm graphing from a damn kayak.
yeah. Well, that's because you're everything you can mark, like like idling at 4 miles an hour while graphing, you can miss some stuff. So yeah, keep cycling back. And when you're paddling at about 2, you can get everything.
Yeah, it says something when you can auto chart a whole dang lake with a kayak. Dude, it's for
How'd you
real.
feel? That was
Yeah,
a good night. Yeah, good
good
episode.
night. Big thank you to Dean for joining us. We are definitely going to be getting him back on the show, and it was just a really good topic to discuss. And one, I think I'm really happy that we were able to do it while even though I'm on a work trip. So thank you, Andy, for pushing all the buttons and making things work tonight.
Hey, you
Especially
push some too. Don't worry.
especially because it's 9:20 my time and it's even later for you because you're obviously Eastern. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you taking the long night, taking one for the team. But beyond that, Andy, I'm good here. If we want to wrap it up.
I mean, I think everybody have a great week if you didn't tune in live. And I hope everybody enjoyed the recording. And as always, if you're generous, please hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, leave a comment what you want to see and hear from us in the future, and we'll do what we can to get it done.
Yeah, and that being said as well, if you're still with us, thank you. And if you listen to this on MP3, especially Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and review, and that helps out big time. So
Yes.
thank you very much, folks.
But for now, we'll see you guys on Friday.
Peace.